I'm going to go ahead and get started. There's always a little bit of housekeeping on these calls, so we still give people a few minutes to join. Thank you so much for being here with us today for our conversation, How Philanthropy Can Support Local Education. I'm Ann McCune, and I'm the Director of Philanthropy at the Community Foundation of Louisville, and I'm so glad to have you here today. We have a wonderful panel and what I think will be a really great conversation. We have Marlon Cole, Executive Director of Evolve 502, Steve Corzine, Advancement Specialist for Nativity Academy, Becky Crump, who's the Director of Resource Development for Jefferson County Public Schools, and Ron Gallo, who's our President and CEO. He'll be saying a few remarks. He's not a formal part of the panel, but he's going to be giving a few remarks to kick us off. But before he does, and before I hand to Ron, we're going to go over a few Zoom housekeeping items, which I'm sure you all are used to. For the attendees, you're actually joining us as a webinar today, so your audio is automatically muted and your video is not enabled. We will be recording this session, and in the future we'll be posting the video for our website, so keep that in mind. After the initial presentations by our panelists, we'll move into the Q&A section. We'll have a few guided questions that I'll lead, and then we'll take questions from the floor. So you can submit questions through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Additionally, if you have questions about the functionality of this webinar or questions that are unrelated to the topic at hand, you can send those to me directly through the chat feature, which you can also find at the bottom. I'll be monitoring both the chat and the Q&A, as well as serving as the MC for our event, so please bear with me if it takes me a couple of minutes to respond. Before we move into the program, I'd like to introduce Ron Gallo, the Community Foundation's President and CEO, to welcome you and provide some remarks. Ron, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Well, and thank you, Ann. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm sorry in advance for not being able to stay on the call for too long, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to introduce myself to yet another group of people that care about education, that care about the Community Foundation. It is a little bit odd, as you might imagine, coming to a community and an organization during a pandemic. Normally I would be out and about everywhere, but this is what's available to us. So this is what we are working with. But I was particularly excited about this session because education is central to the future of Louisville, as it is to every community. As we get to know each other more, you'll know that my personal story is inextricably linked to opportunities in education, first with public schools in the Bronx, New York, and then scholarships getting me to other places that opened horizons and changed the course of my life. And I have never, ever, and will never forget that. And so nothing is higher on my agenda than the investment in the next generation of children who will be leading Louisville one day and will be the citizens of the future who will invigorate our democracy. And that is something that, you know, I haven't made up, but that goes back to the earliest days of our democracy, is of knowing that an informed and educated population is the best asset for a strong country. So I'm glad that there's so many great programs that to be supported and that we have supported at CFL, and that it's across the board. It's collaborative. It includes public, independent, parochial, recognizing that it's through all those efforts that we can reach all the children who need to be reached. So again, for today, I'm just happy to listen in. I'm on a steep learning curve. I've run many community foundations, but you have to know your community in order to do this job well. And I couldn't be surrounded more by incredible staff and a board and donors and everyone that I have met so far. I'm just incredibly impressed by this city and the people who inhabit it and who love it. So I'll turn it back to you, Ann. I'm going to say this out loud. You're an incredible technological Zoom master of ceremonies. It's always seamless, and I just throw it back to you and thank you.
Thank you, Ron. We're all learning. I said to Becky at the beginning of the call, I feel like I always have to make the disclaimer because I seem to schedule these meetings when the mailman is about to come. So if a dog goes crazy in the background, it's just a part of this work from home world that we're in. So Ron, thanks for joining us this morning.
Sure.
So I'm going to kick off our program. I don't think that our topic today could be more timely or relevant as families around the country transition back to school in a way that looks very different from what we are used to. And schools and other educational institutions are working to ensure that their students, teachers, and administrators are safe and that students have what they need to be successful. I said this on another call recently, but the concurrent crises of COVID-19 and the racial justice demonstrations have laid bare and magnified challenges that communities like Louisville around the country are facing, and access to education is one of those challenges. At CFL, we have heard from our fund holders that you are interested in connecting to each other around topics of common interest. And we know that so many of you care deeply about education because your philanthropy reflects that. We also know that educational institutions are facing unique challenges and opportunities related to the pandemic. So today we are pleased to be joined by several representatives from the local education community who will share about the different and creative ways that their work is supported by philanthropy, as well as how they are responding to COVID-19 and to the challenges of ensuring that all students have what they need to be successful. Our panel today is Marlon Cole, Executive Director of Evolve 502, Steve Corzine, Advancement Specialist for Nativity Academy at St. Boniface, and Becky Crump, Director of Resource Development at Jcps. I'm going to introduce each one of them one at a time and invite them to share a little bit about their work. And after we hear from each of them, we'll open up the conversation with some questions. So Marlon, I'm going to start with you. Marlon Cole is the Executive Director of Evolve 502, a public-private partnership working to ensure that every child in Louisville is prepared for college, career, and a successful, productive life. Evolve 502 does this by convening and organizing community partners to better link youth to resources to ensure academic success, and by providing access and funding to pursue a post-secondary education, beginning with the class of 2021. Marlon previously served as Assistant Vice President of Governance and Board Support for Baptist Health, Vice President of Institutional Advancement for Simmons College, Chief Public Affairs Officer for Hosperis, and Assistant Vice President for Jewish Hospital and St. Mary's Healthcare. She has an MBA from Bellarmine University and a bachelor's degree from U of L. Marlon, we are excited to have you here with us today. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, Anne. Appreciate that. And in all of the work that, and Ron, it's a pleasure to get to see you and looking forward to meeting with you and learning more about you. CFL has been a wonderful supporter. You all really helped stand Evolve 502 up. You served as our fiscal sponsor. We were actually housed in your facility for a couple of months in our very beginnings and continue to, well, in pre-COVID, continue to use your space for meetings and so forth. So we greatly appreciate your efforts. The whole team has been extremely supportive of our work from the very beginning. And so thank you for all of that. So yes, as Anne mentioned in her introduction, we are a public-private partnership that's really working to ensure that every child in Louisville has the tools that they need to be successful. And we believe some level of education post-high school is critically important to that success. And so that is why we are so much focused on the post-secondary piece of our work. Our vision and really mission statement boldly states that we are also focused on really mitigating and removing the systemic barriers that are caused by poverty and institutional racism. And we take that very strongly in our efforts to move this work forward, really keeping an equity lens into the work. And so we're pleased to be in this space. We are really focused in three strategies: systems, scholarships, and supports. And so when we talk about systems, we're really looking at using data, using best practices, and really reallocating resources in our community to really address the gaps in the pipeline to post-secondary education for our young people, and working in a collaborative effort around that. From a scholarship standpoint, as you mentioned in your introduction, we were pleased 2 weeks ago to make a significant announcement and reach a significant milestone for this organization to really be able to make the initial promise to the first class of JCPS students, the class of 2021, meaning those seniors that are coming in this fall, a 2-year opportunity at any of our Kentucky community and technical colleges like Jefferson or Simmons College of Kentucky. We are also pleased to be providing some additional support to our lower income students at the incomes of $40,000 or less with what we're calling an opportunity grant that allows, as many of us know that have sent kids to school, there's more than just the tuition costs in going to college. And so transportation, housing, food, those kinds of things are important to students. And so we're providing an opportunity grant for those students to help with that piece. We were thrilled that the Rotary Promise Scholarship Organization is coming under our umbrella. They will continue to support Iroquois and Western high schools and really have laid the groundwork, I think, in the foundation for a lot of the scholarship support in this community. And so we're very grateful to have them as a true partner in this work. And also, we were so thrilled to be able to announce our partnership with the University of Louisville and providing what we're calling a 2+2 opportunity. So again, our lower income students will have that opportunity to not only get an associate's degree, but then transfer to the University of Louisville to secure a bachelor's degree and have 2 more years tuition free. That's going to be a game changer in this community. And we are so grateful for that relationship and partnership. And then on the support side of the work, as you mentioned, COVID and racial injustice, things that have been happening in our community have really uplifted. They didn't invent these problems, but have really put that laser focus for all of us to see where some gaps are in the work that we're doing. And so as we have been pivoting and looking at how do we better connect community to help with JCPS to help address some of these needs, we've been really focused on kind of how do we shore up in particular things that are happening right now with COVID. Kids had to quickly, as you mentioned, transfer to an online platform for learning. Some kids do better with that than others. There's been technology challenges. And so we've been really wrapping our arms around with a group of our partners to say, what can we do to really make a difference? So we pulled together for the summer, really provided more structure and enrichment opportunities for young people online. We were able, again, thanks to the One Louisville Fund that you all housed at the Community Foundation of Louisville, we were able to provide incentives to young people to get them to participate this summer. Because you can imagine they've been sitting in front of computers for several months. The last thing they wanted to do was to spend their summer doing that. But we were able to bring enrichment opportunities for them and other opportunities through that mechanism. And so we were very pleased of the work that we were able to reach so many more children through kind of working collaboratively to provide more resources and more information. We are now shifting our work to think about community learning hubs. And again, nationally, you all, I'm sure, have seen that some communities, some individuals that have resources are bringing together small pods of kids so that they can still have some socialization and some in-person connections. But for our students without resources, our poor students and families, they're not able to do that. And so we are trying to create community hubs to provide that same level of support during these times. We're looking at, organizations that can come together to provide 5 to 10 students at a time to provide that in-person piece. We're looking at how do we ensure that they have food access, how do we ensure that they have the PPE that they need to be able to do this safely, and then again in partnership with JCPS, working to connect even substitute teachers or others that can provide tutoring support either in person or virtually. So that's just very quickly some of the work that we're around. But we know our work is critically important now more than ever as we think about recovery efforts for our community. As Ron mentioned, providing education that is really a key to uplift folks out of poverty, and then to have wraparound supports to really help address some of the ever-changing and challenging needs that our community is having. So thank you.
Marlon, thanks for being here and thanks for sharing. I still remember being at CFL when some of those early conversations around sort of what would become of all 502 were happening, and the work that you all are leading, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it, but it is really sort of potentially life-changing for so many kids in this community. So thanks for sharing, and we'll come back. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions coming up. Next, I'd like to introduce Steve Corzine. Steve is an advancement specialist for Nativity Academy at St. Boniface, where he's focused on relationship development, increasing community awareness, and legacy gifting. Nativity Academy is an independent faith-based middle school created and designed to serve underprivileged students in Louisville. Since its inception in 2003, 82% of Nativity Academy graduates have enrolled in college or post-secondary education, and 97% of its students have graduated from high school. Prior to joining the nonprofit world, Steve worked in community and private banking and wealth management at a number of regional institutions. Steve is a graduate of Southern Illinois University and served as an officer in the United States Marine Corps for 6 years. Steve, welcome.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here and opportunity to join your participants as well as those on the call this morning. I appreciate you laying out what Nativity Academy is all about. It saves me a little time. But I will focus again on our mission, which is to drive achievement in the education of the underserved students that you mentioned, to offer them an opportunity for the future, transforming their lives and actually the lives of their families in most cases. Every dollar that we need, if you will, for the most part, other than what we receive from the USDA for our food program, comes from the outside, from the resources of our community, great supporters that we have. We're focused on the right things and doing the right things to accomplish that, to achieve goals and to change lives. How are we thinking now creatively in the midst of this pandemic relative to education to keep our donors engaged? Well, one of the first things we're doing is communicating on a regular basis with our family, our Nativity Academy family, our supporters in the community, that learning is still happening. And that's a very important thing we want to get across at Nativity Academy. And we are keeping our students and their families as a top priority, their safety, but we are also continuing to embrace the challenges we face and learn to overcome them. We're using email, of course, we're using Zoom, we're using Google Classroom, all these kinds of things today that to some extent we weren't using to a great extent in the past, certainly social media. We have a new principal, Jamie Olika, who among other things with her background comes most recently from the Webb Du Bois Academy where she was a teacher. She's now our principal and she's engaged along with a top-notch faculty in delivering quality instruction in a virtual way to our students via face-to-face time with teachers and their classmates. We're also fortunate to have an interim executive director, Ebony Oray, who many of you may know, who, among other things, worked at the Community Foundation, so we're very fortunate to have her on board. She brings with her a new network of potential supporters, and she's focused on all forms of communications, social media, email, etc., to ensure everyone understands the need to provide all forms of support to Nativity Academy. You know, we talk about time, talent, and treasure, and of course, most of the time we're talking a lot about the money side of it, but we really need, and we have, fortunately, the time and the talent of many, many volunteers who we could not do what we do without. So while the money is very important, we have to engage with our community to get the right people involved to provide those kinds of services. It's exceptionally important. We're doing that hopefully through innovative and creative events. We, for the first time ever, did a virtual auction this spring. We learned a lot from it. We hope we don't have to do it again, but if we do, we'll be much better prepared. We are continuing this year, in fact, on September 14th with our golf scramble, since it's an outdoor activity, so we can continue that on a safe basis. We certainly are participating with the Community Foundation's help in a big way in Give for Good on September 17th. And this year, we're trying to utilize our students, virtually at least, to prepare short individual video segments that we can run during September to talk about Nativity Academy from their perspective. So we're working on that now. We have an associate board who is a passionate group of young professionals who are focused on new and creative ways to support Nativity Academy. Actually, 3 of them have gone on to become members of our board of directors, which we're very happy and proud about. But they are putting on a virtual 5K run this year. Again, something we've never done before, but they have worked with partners in the community, and that's going to be happening, I think, in September. We certainly are utilizing social media, as I mentioned before. We're trying to create interesting and timely posts to share on our Facebook page, which has an organic reach of about 1,200 individuals, but we boost many of those posts to get them out to 6,000 to 8,000 to 9,000 people on a regular basis. So that's a fairly cost-effective way, very cost-effective way actually, of getting more communications out to our community. We're going to, and we are adapting virtual presentations to talk to our student sponsorships, both our student sponsors that we have, and those that we need. That's a big part of our revenue stream, individuals who provide funding for our individual students. And we're going to start with some virtual presentations this year, where in the past we've had group meetings, etc. We're trying to expand upon business sponsorships more this year in the sense of matching donations. We know at least many of the major corporations that we deal with and many of the middle market companies, if their employees donate money, they'll match that donation up to a certain limit. So we're going to try and expand upon that. And finally, we're trying to keep our organizational website robust and updated on a timely basis. We're trying to drive more of our, through our social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, et cetera, things back to our website so people can actually see all the specifics of what's going on within our curriculum and all the other activities. So it's a changing world. We're trying to change with it. We're very fortunate that we have such passionate leaders involved in our organization. Our faculty, our staff, our board of directors, our supporters, all those are so important to what we're doing now. And I'll be happy to talk more about that as we go forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be lots of good questions about that. And thanks. I was gonna give Ebony a shout out. We love Ebony at the Community Foundation. She's an amazing resource. She was responsible for running our scholarship program for a couple of years, and we miss her certainly, but you all are lucky to have her. So last but certainly not least, we'll welcome Becky. Thank you for joining us, Becky. Becky has served as the Director of Resource Development for JCPS since 2008. In her role, she provides direction and leadership to secure external funding and support from federal, state, local, private, corporate, and foundation sources. Under Becky's leadership, her team has secured more than $130 million in successful grants and funding requests. Prior to working for JCPS, Becky worked for the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education and the University of Louisville. Becky's a graduate of Indiana State University with a bachelor's in social work. She received her Ed.S. degree in higher education administration from U of L and master's in communication from Western Kentucky University. Becky, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So one of the things that I told Anne is I always like to use these opportunities because I'm never quite sure in the audience is to just give a profile of JCPS as an organization, because I'm really still shocked when I encounter people in the community how much they really don't know about our student demographics, our population. So for those of you all who don't know, JCPS is the 29th largest district in the country. We haven't done the final enrollment count for this year, but we're close to 100,000 students. 81% of all school-age kids in Jefferson County attend a JCPS school. More than half of our students now identify as students of color. 2/3 of our students are documented as low income, but we know that's much higher. We have 8,000 English language learners. We have 13,000 kids who have a documented learning disability. So I give you all that to kind of tell you, and 6,000 teachers, to tell you both the challenges and the opportunities. So I love working for the district. We have worked very hard. Another thing a lot of people don't realize is that my office, we work a lot with local donors, the local foundations, the corporate philanthropy, but we also have relationships with national foundations who invest in our district and are helping us. And I would emphasize what Steve said. It's not just about money and stuff. It's about investing, giving us technical assistance. We have a very large project right now ongoing with Verizon to transform high poverty middle schools. At the end of 6 years, that project will impact about 11 schools. They've provided us with technology, data plans, teacher learning, technical assistance. Those are the kind of projects that we've seen help us most, because we know we can't do this without partners. We can't do it without external people, external groups. But we have good relationships with a lot of funders and donors, and people also don't understand sometimes it's a family donating a coat and a pair of shoes to a student at a school, and sometimes it's donating $5,000 iPads and data plans, which is Verizon, and then everything in between. My office is also responsible. We are required by state law to report to our board every donation, grant, gift received by the district. Doesn't matter if it's a pair of shoes, doesn't matter if it's a $5 million grant. We have to report that and track and monitor that. So anyway, thank you. Appreciate being here.
Thank you so much, Becky. I appreciate that. I consider myself relatively well informed on education in the community, and those statistics even sort of boggle my mind, particularly the statistic about nearly 50% of students identifying as a person of color. Like that's
closer. It's increasing every year. It's now above 51%.
That's amazing. And if you had asked me, I would have gotten that statistic really wrong. So
yeah.
So thank you for sharing. So we're going to move into thank you all for sharing the comments. I think all of that information provides a really helpful sort of background on the conversation. We're going to move into the Q&A section. I have a couple of questions that I'm going to sort of kick us off with. And for folks joining the call, you can submit questions through the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of the screen. You just click to open the box, and I don't know whether actually I'm looking at it from the facilitator's view, so it may look a little different, but you can submit all questions through the Q&A, and I'll address those as they come in. But just to get us started, I'll go ahead and ask one of the ones that I had. So at the foundation, education is always one of the top 2 areas of giving by CFL fund holders, by both numbers, by number of grants and total dollars. That follows nationally, where roughly a quarter of all foundation giving is focused on education. Each of you have talked about this a little bit, but can you sort of, Marlon, maybe we'll start with you. Talk about the role that philanthropy has played in your organization's work. And again, you've addressed some of that, but if you could give us a couple of examples, I think that would be helpful.
Oh, sure. Well, we quite frankly wouldn't exist without philanthropy. And what Becky and Steve alluded to, same for us. Not only has philanthropy provided the resources to really stand up our organization, but really the thought leadership around what is the space that we should be in as it relates to education attainment in our city. And really goes back to the Greater Louisville Project report that is also provided by funding from philanthropy, that back in 2008 really identified sort of this leakage in the pipeline to education for our community, and really served as a wake-up call for this community to say, we've got to do something about that. And so there have been several efforts along the way. Obviously 55,000 Degrees played a major role in really working towards the educational attainment piece. The mayor's Cradle to Career framework, again, sort of moved that work forward. And we are really the next evolution of that. As we looked at lessons learned from that work, it was clear that really the affordability of post-secondary education was a challenge and an issue. And also, as Becky alluded to, all of the stats of our JCPS students, it was clear that students needed additional supports to really overcome some of these issues, not related to their ability to learn, but really their life circumstances that impact their abilities. And so looking at those efforts, the community came together, and again, with philanthropy, business, the city, Louisville Metro government, many of the community partners around said, okay, what are we going to do and how are we going to address that? And so we are the evolution of that work, moving forward with, as I mentioned, the scholarship opportunity, and then building wraparound support. So philanthropy is critically important and remains important. At the table with us, we have 2 boards of directors that are extremely engaged in this work, that are very representative of our community in the city. And so, yes, it's a huge piece of what we do and what we are.
Becky, I'm going to thank you, Marlon. I'm going to direct this one to you because it's just sort of a follow-up, because one of the things that we at the Community Foundation sort of think about as we are, with the money that we have that's unrestricted, so not our donor-directed dollars, but the dollars that the Community Foundation staff and committees get to decide where that goes. one of the things that we consider is whether our funding can serve as either gap funding or as sort of trial funding. So if you have projects that are you're sort of you aren't necessarily proven out, or you don't have the data that you might need to go to a large institutional funder, you know, you might come to the Community Foundation or to an individual funder to say, help us, give us 3 years of funding, help us see if this works. Have you seen that in your work and for specific projects that you all might want to be building a case for?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, you know, again, 169 schools, big districts. So philanthropy and giving takes many different forms, because
Sure.
whether you're talking about the school level and the districts. So, but we very much, when we look at our donors and external resources that come into the district, it very much is about gaps.
Mm-hmm.
Not, you know, the district uses its funds, I think, in a very strategic way, funding instruction, and, you know, every dollar is tied to an instruction in our schools that have more challenges, get more resources through, but there are other gaps that we can't use our funding for that, you know, just, you all have seen, I'm just going to say this, you know, our facility needs are enormous because, you know, we haven't built new schools at a rate. We have old, you know, we have schools, our average age of our buildings is 65. That is, you're talking about huge amounts of money. So we've actually had, in some cases, again, this is, you know, some businesses, Kindred, GE, UPS, have actually come in and helped us when we had to do really transform our academies of Louisville high schools to meet those programs. We couldn't have done that without GE, UPS. I mean, UPS essentially came into the school and built a conveyor belt system that models what they deal with, so we could teach students about logistics and electricity, you know, becoming electricians. GE has been huge in that. And so you're right, when we look at newer innovations, sometimes that's tough. The other thing that makes it tough, I'm going to be quite honest, given the local, is just the scope and cost. Mm-hmm. We're very thankful to have partners across the country. Verizon, at the end of 6 years, will invest more than $30 million in 11 middle schools, teacher training, technology. That's huge. We need that. It's about making those schools one-to-one, giving them connectivity, teaching teachers how to effectively integrate technology into their classroom. There's no way we could have taken on a project like that without a supporter like Verizon or New America, who's actually investing and helping us with our apprenticeship programs in our high school. There's lots of really weird, I wouldn't say this, weird rules about that in the state system. And so having an outside partner helping us navigate that and invest money, time, and technical assistance. So I think that, and then the other thing is just gap in individual schools. You know, I always give the example of, you know, we have high schools, and I'm very thankful for this, that quite frankly, students take trips abroad. That's part over spring break and in the summer. You know, we have schools where we are struggling to find money for them to go to the science center to pay the, I mean, it's those kinds of gaps. It's very much about equity for us. If philanthropy helping us, you know, provide high quality educational experiences and all type of experiences for all students, regardless of, you know, where you live, who you live with, whatever. So anyway.
Thank you. We have one question that's come in, and I'm going to sort of take the liberty of being the MC to sort of just tweak this slightly. So, you know, parents that have school-age kids, and even those of us that don't have kids but who have nieces and nephews, are really worried about the year ahead in terms of what it's going to look like for their kiddos, for their family members, and the concern of losing effectively a year of education is sort of weighing, I think, heavily on everyone. I will pose this question to the four of you, and then ask that you consider the fact that you have like the Community Foundation of Louisville representatives and potential funders on the call. What role should philanthropy be playing in, or what could philanthropy do differently to ensure that the students get what they need and have a year of education that they need to have in the coming year? I've tweaked that a little bit. Just anybody want to jump in?
I'll jump in.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Steve.
No, go ahead.
We have this saying at JCPS that whether we're dealing with donors, our number one thing is we want you to do things with us, not to us and for us. Because a lot of times what we struggle with external groups and organizations is they want to help, they have a good heart, but part of it is coming in and getting to know us as a district, to know what the landscape is before assuming you have a program or something that is going to help us, if that makes sense. We've really worked hard the last couple of years with our university partners, community organizations, and about, we want you in our schools, we want you with us, but we want you to do things with us, not for us and to us. So that would be my
Yeah, and I would just add, these are very challenging times, and I think everyone is concerned about what's the long-term impact for not only students within JCPS, but our college-age students. I have a sophomore in college right now who's back on a campus, and we're wondering, is she going to be able to stay there for the full semester, and what's that going to look like? I think really, to Becky's point, kind of connecting into some of the work that's being done. Again, I plug some of the rapid response work that we've been doing, which has been very much in conjunction with JCPS at the table and other folks in this space that are already connected to young people and maybe are more on the ground with them than any of us can be in serving and understanding what those needs are. And so we are working very hard to elevate that. We think providing more connection points, whatever they look like right now, is significant. So if you can volunteer with a site, if you can provide resources that would help a site be able to provide more staffing, help with, like I said, PPE right now is critical. Donations of that would be tremendous. And so really just trying to put our arms around kids, provide more touch points for them, be able to mentor them, for them to see that someone does care and is encouraging them and supporting them, I think is very critical right now. So I think really, again, I think what you all did with the One Louisville Fund was tremendous, and that folks could give into that, and then you could support needs as they were bubbling up. So I think more of that type of effort is very much needed as we move forward. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't speak about scholarship support. As much as we can really make this promise possible for 13 classes of students, which is our goal, we think is critically important. And that is I think Ron alluded to this, really investing in the human infrastructure of our community right now is critical. So whether it be our scholarship, supporting Nativity School and others that are in this space, it's just critically important right now.
Thank you both. Steve, I think you were going to jump in.
I was just, but very well said by everyone else. I think from a money perspective and how the support can really be directed, of course, I'm sure like many, we have built what we call a COVID-19 budget this year, which encompasses all kinds of things, including technology and Chromebooks and other things. We've added, just as of this week, actually, or last week, a technology coordinator to our staffing, which we've never had before. Specifically, we need to fund that, so we're looking for ways to, we are funding it, but looking for ways to continue to fund that. Those are things, and I can speak firsthand. I'm helping my granddaughter, who is a JCPS kindergarten student, and I get duty about 2 or 3 days a week with her now, and it's a challenge, first of all, it's a little frustrating from a grandparent standpoint. I'm reasonably skilled, I guess, to some extent with technology, but it's still a challenge. And then just the whole process of educating virtually at the kindergarten level, certainly it changes from each level, I understand that. But so we're trying to make sure through Zoom calls, and this technology coordinator has regular calls with our families. I actually sat in on a call recently where they can ask questions. Are you having a problem with the software, or anything, you know, just like we always do. And those are the kind of things that you've really, I think, today got to be adapting to, because it is frustrating. And I can appreciate that for our parents, for the kids. But I think we'll come out of this, frankly, a much better structurally sound educational system, able to adapt in ways we weren't able to in the past. It's going to be, it is in some cases an uphill challenge, but I think we will come out of it. And I know we're putting a lot of time and talent into that to make sure it's structured and to make sure what we're providing is very robust. And we have high expectations of our students, and they have expectations of us, I think, on the educating side, but we're going to continue to meet those.
That's great. And actually that goes into a sort of comment / question that came through in the chat that I think everybody can see, but it says, how do we get businesses and corporations to create a parents and students IT help site because too many are last with the online learning? I think that's a really great point, and it's an idea, you know, Becky, to your point about not having things done to you or for you, but with you. I think what Steve has identified in terms of the challenges that a lot of families are facing sort of reinforces what this attendee has brought up in terms of the need for, you know, some sort of tech support. I don't know, personally, I'm not helping my nieces and nephews with their online learning, but it's an interesting idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would just, go ahead, Marlon.
Well, no, I was going to say I was going to give you a plug. You might want to speak to the toolkit.
Because I'm both a parent and I work for the district. So yeah. I would say to that, the district has created points on our website specifically for parents, you know, videos of how Google Classroom works. But, you know, we try through social media. We have a specific platform to only do communications to parents. You know, I would say businesses and corporations help us get parents. We have the resources there. It's getting parents connected to those resources is the challenge, because we're still kind of amazed that, you know, we've tried, we can send it out through an app on their phone. We put it on, and I guess, you know, a lot of parents do it, but I would also add to this too, you have to look at the groups that are struggling the most, and that's a lot of our English language learner families. And so I'm not sure that would be a challenge for this particular, I'm not sure that, so again, understanding what the challenge is, understanding what resources that we've already created for parents, but maybe we can, you know, not do. So what happens when it cannot access? So we did hard copies of hard packets of information for parents, but again, that required them to go to the school, but to pick up packets, or we mailed stuff. But yeah, those are, I think the resources are there. It's figuring out the best way, and Marlon is how do we get families and parents, how can we get them to access it and use it?
Right. And, you know, and part of our strategy, again, engaging more with our out of school time partners, because many times they are connecting one-on-one with families and parents, and they're in and throughout our community is one way. And so we've been working to ensure that they are very well versed on the tools and information that JCPS is rolling out, so that they can also share it. I think our churches can play a role in that, of communication. It is about reaching people where they are, where they can gain the information and be able to access it. And so I think we all can have a role in sharing this information's available. Here's where you can go to get it, and work better with that. But I think, again, using those partners that are on the ground, working with students and families is one very good opportunity to do that.
Yeah. So
yes.
I'm gonna, I knew, oh, go ahead, Becky.
Well, yes, we do our documents and resources in different languages. That's through our English as a second language office. So we have those. The other thing I would say too is schools are really the ones that are directly connecting with parents and trying and making sure, you know, they're keeping track of which kids are not getting online and trying to figure out what the parent needs. We have parent liaisons, we have family resource youth service center coordinators, we've had people who've made home visits. So, I mean, again, we are always up for what else can we do, but it's not just technology that we've been using. We've been out we have people in schools out, people have done home visits. And so it's just very challenging with 100,000 kids. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to sort of refocus us back on the topic at hand in terms of philanthropy and philanthropy supporting education. So, the 20th and 21st centuries have been really sort of filled with and by philanthropists who are focused on education, on supporting families, on libraries. I mean, you think about the Carnegies and the MacArthurs and the, contemporary philanthropists like the Gates and even Facebook, Mark, what's his name? Zuckerberg. But I think that educational philanthropy is really it's sort of on the edge of a major shift as a new generation of donors emerges and younger donors begin to engage more in philanthropy. What challenges, and this is just sort of open to the group, what challenges or opportunities do you all see when it comes to engaging the next generation of philanthropists in each of your organizations' work specifically or in educational philanthropy more broadly?
Mm-hmm.
I'll start by, I mentioned when I was talking earlier about our associate board, which again are young professionals, so that next generation. And, I'm the liaison with them for the organization. So I get a chance to really understand better, I think, some of those issues. One of the things is communication, where I've gotten used over the years of using email or that type of thing, working from a laptop or a PC. They don't use that for them. I'm going to use they in this category,
Yeah.
But, they use text. Certainly Twitter is a big thing for that generation. Instagram, obviously. So forms of communication, how you're going to reach out to those individuals, totally different than what it's been. You send them a letter, I doubt that's really going to be too effective. Like we have done, and we still do traditionally. We have a great group of supporters that respond to our mail campaigns by letter. I mean, we couldn't do without that, but that's not the way this next generation functions. So those are things that we're looking at. And I think engaging them in hands-on activities, I mentioned that virtual 5K run that the associate boards were, those are things they want to do. They want to see a direct result for their efforts. And I use they again. I mean, I guess I do too as a donor, but not probably in the same way that I think that next generation does. And I'm not being critical of that. I think that's great. It's probably even better in some respects. So we have to adapt to that change, to your point, Ann, of dealing with the communication side, what motivates them, and how do we get them engaged with our particular organization. And that's an ongoing challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for a lot of organizations. Okay. Becky or Marlon?
Yeah, I would just agree with everything that Steve said. And you're right. I think the younger generation wants to get their hands in the work a little bit more and want the compelling stories that really can connect why your work is important and what differences is it making. And again, not that is so completely different from other generations of givers, but definitely critical in this piece. And I think the more that we can connect, my hope is that some of the younger generation are recent college graduates, and they have had the experience of going to school, and they know what some of the challenges can be, either that they had themselves or that they had, fellow friends or people that they connected with in class that were dealing with. And so hoping that they can really connect to the need to really support students through that time and process, not just with resources, but financial resources, but other supports to ensure that they can be successful through that process, I think is critical. So the more that we can get our messaging out, show real life students that we are connecting and helping in that way, I think will hopefully resonate more with that population. And as Steve's point, using more of the social media to do some of that, but finding ways for them to really engage in the work in a meaningful way, I think is critically important.
Well, and Becky, I'll hand it to you in just a second. One of the things I think we're seeing more of at the Community Foundation, and it's not necessarily limited to the sort of next generation or younger generation. It's, I think, just a different way of doing of thinking about philanthropy and what it means. It's not a transactional, I want to write a check and be done with it. I want to be, you know, even going as far as sort of a fund holder co-creating something with an organization. And I think, Becky, to your point, something you said a couple minutes ago is I think it's a fine line between feeling like it's being sort of assigned to you or done to you, as opposed to an idea, you know, built from the ground up with all partners involved that is clearly filling a need and a gap. And I think we're seeing more and more fund holders who are interested in being brought in at an earlier stage, not to let the tail wag the dog, but to be brought in to sort of get that engagement and just sort of, if they have part of a vision, that their vision can be part of the greater vision.
Mm-hmm.
So I would agree totally with what Steve and Ann said about, I mean, we've been looking at a lot of the research on how volunteerism is, how, you know, for individual donation, you know, there's a lot of research out there that it is going to shift, and we need to figure out how we still work effectively and engage people in the community, because I think I said this before, for us, it's more than just about money and stuff. I mean, we have so many volunteers in our schools helping with all different kinds of things, but you got to look at what the research says on the next generation, how they kind of view volunteerism, which is a little bit different than the way we've sort of approached it in the past. And so, yeah, I agree. It's just a matter of understanding and figuring out how you be strategic. I mean, the statement I said about we want to do things with our partners and our donors instead of having it done to us or for us is really for us a matter about being strategic, because the thing we've learned over the years is more is not always better. It can be just more chaotic. And so we've really worked hard in the last couple of years to, we want to engage them and have people get to know the district in the reality of the district, because I assure you that's not what you see every day in the media. And so we welcome that. And, you know, you can talk to our partners at GE and UPS and who have been so involved with some of our high schools and Verizon. And those are the partnerships that will create projects that will transform learning, and they will be sustainable.
So we are just under time. I'd like to give each of you sort of a minute to any final, you know, closing thoughts or closing remarks, you know, with the audience that we have. Any final thoughts? Marlon, you want to start?
Sure. Well, again, just very much appreciate this opportunity and appreciate being able to connect with folks that are engaged already with the Community Foundation, that have a passion around education and want to make a difference. And I think we, you know, while we have our challenges, most definitely in our community right now, I am encouraged by folks who I believe really have in their heart the desire to be connected, to help and support and really listen and learn and help, you know, organizations like all of ours to really work through this. And so that's very encouraging. And so I just am grateful for that level of support and thank everyone for all that they're doing to make a difference, because it takes all of us to do this work together. JCPS can't do it alone. These are not their issues, these are community issues that we're talking about trying to address. And so it takes all of us collectively working together. And I have appreciated the reception that we get in working with our partners around all of this. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Of course. Steve, I'll pass it to you next.
Sure. Well, again, thank you to you and to the Community Foundation. I know I speak for Nativity Academy when I say how important we feel the Community Foundation is to the Kentuckiana community, certainly the individual donors, donor advised funds, and all the various facets, the grants, et cetera. We could not do it without that kind of support, and we are very, very appreciative of that. We look forward to the future, and we look forward to working with you and those that in the Community Foundation, that network. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Becky, any last thoughts?
Yeah, not much left to say. I think Steve and Ann captured it. You know, again, I would agree. We will not be successful without the support of our philanthropic partners, with the community. And I want to reiterate what Ann said, with 100,000 students, it is a community issue that the impact is far reaching. And we appreciate so much our partners, our donors, our contributors who are, I've just been amazed, even during this time of NTI, helping us get devices in kids' hands and making sure families had connectivity to internet. The support we've seen is just unbelievable, and I think that's what makes this community great.
Well, thank you all. Thanks to our panelists again for being here with us today. Thank you to the folks that have called in for spending an hour with us. If you have follow-up questions for me or any of the folks on the call today, you can reach out to me directly. Thank you for your time again, and we look forward to more conversations down the road. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.